What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another episode of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, and joining me, as always, are Callum Wiggins.
What are we doing, Tony?
We'll figure it out in a second. And Robert DeFelice.
Okay, it's been a second. What are we doing, Tony?
What we're doing, there you go, haha, is an edition of Going Over, which we very rarely ever do. And what we typically end up saving Going Over for is when things are so odd or so sometimes very specific where we're not really reviewing anything targeted like a pay-per-view, or we're not doing some kind of a gimmick in the sense of like a superstar scores or something like that, where we just kind of want to talk. And enough things have happened so far this week that we were debating between the idea of just bumping up the hot tags and making the hot tags on Wednesday and then switching things around and doing something else on Friday or Saturday or so, or just doing this. And we kind of figured, you know what? There's enough going on that we should just dedicate a little bit of time to this. So Going Over is just a general discussion. And last night, the idea was we'll just talk about the Becky Lynch scenario. Then, of course, they added two more things on top of that. So officially, I guess the bigger focal point for this is going to be two prongs. One of them is going to be Becky Lynch announcing that she is pregnant and vacating the Raw Women's Championship to Asuka. And the second is going to be focused on the fact that last night at, I think it was like 2 a.m. or something, it's right after I had made the graphics for this being entirely about the pregnant Becky Lynch angle, then I had to redo them all because they said Sami Zayn is no longer the Intercontinental Champion. And they're going to do a tournament on SmackDown. They're going to start a tournament on SmackDown to determine who wins that title next. Then, now that the bump has gone down, there's also another thing that at least we're going to get a little bit of clarification for tonight, which is that William Regal is making some sort of an announcement on NXT. So that's the redheaded stepchild of this 3-section edition that we're going to be doing today. And we're just going to talk and figure out what the hell's going on with WWE. It's 2020. The theme of 2020 is basically when you wake up, the world's different. And I'm not sure how things are going to change, and neither are Rob and Callum, but we're going to kind of try to speculate on where WWE goes from here. So we invite you to do the same in the comments below. Obviously, if you're listening to us on some kind of a platform that doesn't have a comment section like Spotify or Stitcher or iTunes or Google Podcasts or whatever it is, then leave us a follow or a star rating or whatever it is on that platform and hop on over to one of the ones that does have that option, whether it's the pages on smarkatmoment.com or you want to leave a comment on the Facebook page or send a tweet at smarkatmoment, or the best option, go to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done that already. Ring that little notification bell as well. Hit the like button on the video to show that you enjoyed this podcast, and drop a comment on the little comment section below. So we want your opinions about this as well. So, Going Over has no real theme to it. It's just talk. I guess let's just dive into, I guess, the one that people aren't as super duper into as the other two, and the easiest one that we're just kind of like, who the hell knows? This William Regal thing. I didn't watch the bump, but did you check it out, either of you?
I did not check out the bump, but I know that Regal had announced that he'll be making an announcement, and they're using the term major, which, obviously it's wrestling. It could just be, we're going to have a number one contenders battle royal, or maybe it's something related to the state of NXT as it is. But it's at least got me intrigued for tonight's episode of NXT.
No, I didn't watch the bump. I didn't know about this announcement until a couple of minutes ago when Rob mentioned it. And I don't really care what the announcement is, because I don't know what exactly could they say that's so quote unquote major. If it's major enough, then okay. Then I literally can't even visualize anything that could be so major that it needs to be given its own real platform to talk about it. I kind of feel like they would just mention that the final of the cruiserweight tournament they're doing is happening in 2 weeks' time or something like that.
See, I have a couple ideas in my mind already. And not knowing what they were talking about in the bump, I kind of assumed that they were just sort of like, hey, we've got William Regal on the line. And Regal's like, excuse me, my voice is going away. Apologies. Regal is probably just like, hey, I have a major announcement I'm going to do tonight. And then they were like, wow, oh my God, you tuned in to NXT. It's probably that kind of thing. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, whatever. But it could be something as simple as we're having a number one contenders battle royal or something for either the women's championship or the NXT championship. Because right now, Velveteen Dream lost to Adam Cole. So we need to determine a new challenger. Rhea Ripley made her return, but they gave her a separate thing on WWE.com where it's like, what's Rhea Ripley going to do now that she's back or whatever. So I don't think that it's that.
Do you want me to add something to this thing quickly that's just been released on WWE NXT's Twitter account?
Oh God, what?
The announcement's going to be made by, well, they say hashtag DX. Triple H and Shawn Michaels are going to make the announcement.
Yep. So that plays into what I had mentioned before we started, which is I think it's going to be in 2 weeks or whatever the time where NXT is going to be the first show with fans back in attendance.
That's a possibility for sure, because that is a major announcement. I also think that there's a couple other potential things that they could say. I'm not going to do like 5 announcements or something like that. It's just going to be one, but another one could be something with NXT UK, because there's nothing at all happening with NXT UK right now. And I know that they can't like do international flights and something like that, but maybe at this point they're at a weird state where they're like, hey, we had to fire a bunch of people and we had to do this, we had to do that. Maybe they're going to say something like this brand to brand invitational that they seem to be wanting to do, but they didn't really they didn't harp on that a whole lot this week. It was just the Drew McIntyre thing, right?
Yeah, as far as that. Oh, and Charlotte is apparently on SmackDown.
Yeah, apparently she's triple branded for some freaking reason.
Because she's fucking Charlotte. But
yeah. But with this brand to brand invitational, I think, maybe I'm wrong, they only had McIntyre very vaguely say, hey, with the brand to brand invitational, I think Baron Corbin's gonna come over here and invite me. Okay, whatever. They didn't really say by the way, from now on we're gonna have this crossover. I didn't miss that, right?
I don't think so.
But maybe they're gonna say something along the lines of, well, NXT UK is being folded into NXT even more so. And anybody who is normally in the one range is able to compete with other things or something like that. It wouldn't really be any major announcement because they've already done that in the past. Like Imperium pops up on NXT and NXT UK. It's not a big deal. But maybe they are going to kind of try to get rid of the brand a little bit. Another option, I don't think that this is going to be the case, but wouldn't it be kind of crazy if they were like, hey, we're going to start NXT Japan? And they just want to announce something like that just to get people talking. Another thing, maybe NXT is joining this whole brand to brand extension thing, and they're going to pop up more on Raw and SmackDown the way that they've had Cal Bloom pop up and Denzel DeJournette and everything. Maybe they were doing that whole talent exchange type crap again. Maybe William Regal is stepping down as general manager, and Shawn Michaels and Triple H are just going to be filling that spot. There's a lot of options. Or it could be something as simple as the major announcement is the interim championship is going to be for the championship and we're not making it an interim thing.
I doubt it's that. I think that's a little extreme. I don't think they would announce that they're gonna fold NXT UK or anything like that, but I could be wrong. I really think it's got to be something with people coming back into the arenas. But it could also be, hey, Regal stepping down and Shawn Michaels will be the GM from now on.
I mean, it's a quote-unquote major announcement. Sometimes they've had major announcements be huge, shocking, and crazy news, like the Becky Lynch type stuff. And sometimes major announcements have been, NXT is going to have a 5-minute overrun kind of thing or something,
I
That's
don't know.
kind of up in the air.
I think that in this era, if they're saying it's major, I feel like it'll be something genuinely significant.
Maybe they found the E in NEXT. It's going to be finally called Next from now on.
It could be.
Well, that's something we'll figure out tonight, or at least they'll announce something or something along those lines. But the bigger two stories, the original idea of the going over, let's talk about the Becky Lynch one first, because that was originally the first and only topic that we were going to talk about. And it is the oldest out of the three stories. For those who did not watch Monday Night Raw and have been living under a rock for the past day or so, Becky Lynch was supposed to confront the Money in the Bank winner. And then they switched the wording of that to Becky Lynch is going to make a major announcement. And what happened on Raw was she came out holding the Money in the Bank briefcase. And she had Asuka come out and she explained to her that the Money in the Bank match was not for the Money in the Bank briefcase and contract for a title shot. In fact, it was for the Raw Women's Championship. So she opened up the briefcase. Inside was the Raw Women's title. She gave the belt over to Asuka. And the wording, I forget exactly if this is verbatim, was, you go be the warrior, I'm going to go be a mother. And, of course, confirmation about that, whatever. Becky Lynch is pregnant. She is obviously no longer going to wrestle while she's pregnant, because that is just an absolutely horrible idea that could not possibly go well in any fashion whatsoever. And she's relinquished that title to Asuka, and now they have to move on. It's a lot to wrap your mind around, because even though it's pretty straightforward, there's a lot that goes into this kind of stuff. So I guess the first question I have for you guys is, what were you thinking at first when you heard about this?
I had two thoughts. First was really happy for Becky and Seth, and the next one was, oh man, WWE is just being hit with every possible what if scenario they can be hit with.
I didn't really have a chance to prepare or think about it because I was probably asleep at the time that
Yeah,
this
that's
announcement
true.
was made. So when I saw it, it's once I knew she would relinquish it, I assumed that she's either had a long-term injury or she was pregnant. They were kind of like the only two options you'd really see. It's quite weird because all this talk had been surrounding the idea that Becky would leave WWE anyway and find some sort of movie role, because apparently Hollywood agents were interested in her services and stuff like that. So I didn't think it'd be that related, because I don't assume she would just say, "Okay, I'm just leaving WWE right this instance."
Yeah, people are dumb. Who really thought that Becky was just gonna come out on Raw and just be like, "Yeah, I'm in a Marvel movie now, so suck it, bye." There were a lot of people suggesting that might be what she says.
But yeah, so again, it's just congratulations to both her and Seth for this, and I think that considering everything that happened, it kind of makes sense why Asuka won it now.
Yeah.
Because the idea was that if it would have been Becky holding the title and Asuka's the Money in the Bank, we're just rehashing the same stuff that happened in the winter of this year. Whereas now it's it came kind of full circle in that, and it wouldn't have made sense if it was Nia or Shayna, because if they had been holding it, you couldn't really have the celebration moment. Asuka can do that because she can turn babyface quite easily in the position that she's in. She's already very popular. She's been doing stuff which are kind of bordering between the heel and babyface thing for quite a while now anyway. And it's not exactly like Becky could say, "I'm going to be a mother," and Shayna is supposed to hug her, or Nia Jax is supposed to hug her. They'd probably just it's not really in their character. So the best solution was to give the title to Asuka and try and carry on as best as you possibly can, really, at that point.
Well,
I think
those were her three options. I mean, not only did they announce that those were three for Raw competing for the Money in the Bank briefcase to begin with, but the other options would have been maybe Natty, but it's still not quite as good of an option as Asuka, because Asuka's got more pizzazz to her and everything right now.
Well,
They
she's got the
could
history of
have,
Becky as well, so it makes sense
yeah,
in that regard.
they could have had somebody like Liv win and all that, but then they'd be hot-shotting the championship to her, and I don't think that that's a smart idea. They could have gone with Ruby Riott, but it's not the better scenario, especially because she's not going to do the whole hugging thing either, and why bother if you've got the other options and stuff. So, yeah, like between the options that they had available to them, other than doing some kind of, well, now this person's on Raw and then that person wins, and then let's give that to Lacey Evans, or, like anything like that, Asuka does make the most sense. And there is a certain level of respect that they've had between the two of them, even going back to their program before, where you can buy the character of Becky Lynch calling Asuka a warrior and kind of endorsing her as the next champion. So I'm not opposed to that at all. But there is part of me that goes, well, there's some reports, I don't know how real or fake or how big of a grain of salt you need to take this is that she might have possibly wrestled pregnant at WrestleMania, and of course she wouldn't have done that if she would have known, but kind of makes you think, wrestling is 2020 in hindsight, if maybe she would have had a test taken or something, or any of those scenarios that would come about like that. This is maybe like the fourth or fifth thing that it's looking like right now, where it's like, if you would have just had this title change at WrestleMania, you wouldn't be in this scenario.
So there's a small possibility, because she said to People magazine that she took a test in April and it came back negative, and then she took another one and it came positive because she just felt like, no, there's something going on here. So there's a small possibility that yes, she might have, but I don't really want to get into the what ifs of it because it happened the way it happened. Like I told you privately, like, well, if they had thought this, then maybe I would have had, Rhea beat Charlotte, and then Charlotte wins the briefcase and has the moment with Becky because they're the best friends and all that. But it happened the way it happened. I thought Asuka's reaction was 5-star, and
Yeah, I
she
like
made the
that.
moment all the more better. And genuinely one of the best moments I've seen on Raw ever. So while yes, you can argue, hey, Shayna should have won at Mania, and it's another briefcase down, it's what they're working with, and it's not like this is the first curveball that's been thrown at them all year.
I still can't help but feel, though, with this whole wrestling is 2020 and the hindsight type of thing, like we could already we can look back and go, all right, this is another example of how Charlotte probably shouldn't have won the Royal Rumble. It should have probably been Shayna, and they should have done this and they should have done that and all this, because like Rhea Ripley hasn't gotten anything positive out of this whole thing. And if you would have known that Becky wouldn't be able to keep the title going forward, and all the things, obviously WWE does not have the benefit of hindsight, so things would have been different if they would have had that, I'm sure. But it is sort of like, maybe this and the other story we're going to talk about the idea of Sami Zayn vacating the Intercontinental title. Maybe you shouldn't, in an era where you don't know what's going on, you shouldn't stretch things out as if you have all the options in the world. You know, like if there's some possibilities that things can go down, contingency plans are good. And they were clearly not expecting Becky Lynch to vacate the title and to suddenly get pregnant and be expecting and all this other kind of stuff like that. That was not in their plans. It's not like they're sitting there writing up their sheet of like the next couple of feuds and it's like, and then Becky gets pregnant, and then it's not like this is something. And obviously it's more important for her to go and have that whole focus rather
Experience.
than the Roman's championship is not as important. But it does kind of make you think like how things would be different if they could have known that in the past.
Well,
Uh,
you're kind of saying that as if it would have been an improvement that Shayna had just beaten Becky at WrestleMania.
well, it kind of
Feel like
depends.
I kind of feel like this moment and giving the title to Asuka is actually an improvement on giving it to Shayna.
It kind of depends on where they go from here, I think. Because if they don't have this as part of their plans to begin with, they're going to have to rehaul everything now. And that could be really good. Like, Asuka right now is not necessarily a heel or a face. They sort of didn't quite solidify that on Raw. So I know a lot of people are like, Asuka turned face. She didn't necessarily. She had a babyface moment with Becky, and I got to assume that she is a babyface now, but maybe not. And looking at her options of who she can feud with, she can feud with Ruby Riott, Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, etc., etc. But what they did harp on is Shayna's still 100% heel. And I
Oh yeah.
loved Shayna's promo. Just like, oh my God, you're the champion, you're on top, and you're gonna get knocked up, and the kid's gonna suck because like look at his dad and her dad or whatever. Like that's so good. I loved that. So that was another benefit. That did more for Shayna's character to me than some of the promos leading up to WrestleMania for sure. And there's a lot of positives that's coming out of this already. So it might not necessarily have been a better scenario to just give the title to Shayna and have it be like this cut and dry, she wins, and then where do we go from there type of thing. Maybe this is the best thing because it also has given us Asuka doing everything she could possibly do. She, right now, won the NXT Women's Championship, the SmackDown Women's Championship, the Royal Rumble, the Raw Women's Championship, was a sole survivor, and Money in the Bank.
And tag team champion.
And the tag team titles, yeah. So she has done everything that a woman can possibly do on the roster.
She's the first person, right?
Yeah.
No, I think in the triple threat chat that we have on like Facebook, Ben put it most succinctly. It's like, yeah, she's achieved everything she's ever done, and she still feels like she's been underutilized her entire career on the main roster.
Right. It's weird. Like, she's
know,
got
it's,
one up on, or maybe even two up on. Yeah, wait.
on
Yeah.
Bayley, yeah.
No, just one up. The Royal
Because
Rumble.
Bailey won the briefcase, but Bailey has won the Rumble.
Or
So
the
I'll-
No, but it's
Survivor.
off Survivor, right?
That's right, yeah. So two up on her. And that's the next closest option because, like, Alexa's not going to go. I mean, never know. People could go back and win the NXT title. Charlotte did, so I guess that's, but like, that's crazy, and that's awesome because Asuka's awesome. So for her to achieve this like above Grand Slam type of level, we're talking Asuka's on the same sort of scenario as Edge. Just like
yeah.
check off all the boxes type of thing. And Sheamus if he wins the Intercontinental title, because Sheamus has done practically everything too. Oh, he didn't win the Universal title. But still, like, that's nuts. And that's cool.
They need to start. Well, I don't say need to start. They've booked her strong pretty much for the last year or so, but they need to just treat her as the top star now of the women's division. Like push her ahead of everyone else because that's her status now. If she's essentially been given the torch passed over to her from Becky Lynch, and there's not exactly anybody else on Raw. Like Liv is still very much like growing into her role. Like she's already said in like promos that she doesn't even know what her role is or who she is or anything like that. So it's hard for her to step up to that level. You're not exactly going to. Shayna Baszler still needs to establish herself in the roster. I don't want that Nia Jax to be positioned in anything like that. So just push the entire thing, push the entire machine behind Asuka and have her hold the title until SummerSlam or even beyond that, and until you think that you've got a fitting challenger to take the title from her. Because my worry is that they're going to have the next pay-per-view and Shayna's just going to win it off Asuka because they'll just hotshot it onto her.
I do think Shayna's beating Asuka, but I don't think it's happening that soon. It wouldn't shock me if maybe next week they went with, like, let's start a Nia Jax feud. I'm not super interested in Asuka versus Nia Jax, but, we got Backlash, Extreme Rules, and then SummerSlam, right? I think that's the case. So they could do Nia, for instance, for the next two pay-per-views. Do a regular match at Backlash, Last Woman Standing, or whatever it is that they want to do, a street fight, blah, 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 at Extreme Rules. And then Shayna gets the title shot at SummerSlam and wins.
But I kind of feel like why would Shayna have been the one to have given a promo afterwards about like the pregnancy thing? Like surely if the next feud was going to be Nia Jax, it would have been Nia Jax giving that promo.
Yeah.
Not necessarily though, because look at how they booked things like Bailey against Naomi and Carmella over like the course of that type of frame. Like they seemed to be pushing in a certain direction, and then they just kind of went like, "Nah, how about this instead?" Like, you know, I think that might have just been a matter of let's not lose track of the fact that Shayna is somebody that we're gonna push. And next week or so, maybe they do some kind of a number one contenders match, and it's just whatever it is. Or maybe next week they have a backstage segment with Nia and Asuka. You know, they could have Shayna over the course of the next couple weeks, months, whatever it is. She can just sort of beat up on a couple other people because she seems to be kind of in a little bit of a feud with Natty. They set up this whole thing with her right after that where Natty's like, "Oh, I'm offended at what you said about Becky." And then she's like, "Well, you're not going to have any kids. The Hart Dynasty's going to end with you." And then she beats Natty, and Natty did the whole like kicking and screaming type BS. So maybe that's the feud in the meantime for Shayna.
I kind of felt that was a one and done thing.
Might be.
But who really knows? I mean, we're living in a world where Otis has a guaranteed world title shot right now.
It's crazy. And
Not that
a lot
he's
of
apparently going to use that. He says he wants to be a tag team champion anyway.
I think that's the worst precedent you can set. I know Tony is a fan of that, but I think that's a really bad precedent to set.
Isn't a worse precedent set giving someone like I'm a big fan of Otis, but to give someone in his current state as essentially a joke character, giving him the world championship?
No, he defends it and loses it to somebody who can be world champion. That's it. Like,
yeah, well then it's just like I don't say you're wasting money in the bank again, but it's just a case of then why don't you just crown the person the Money in the Bank winner in the first place if you're just going to say, okay, we're not actually going to give any of these people that are in wrestling this match the Money in the Bank briefcase. We'll just give it to someone. We're going to give it to someone else in a couple of weeks or months anyway.
Well, we never got your take on Otis because you weren't on the post show with us. Like I had said to Tony, the weirdest thing about this to me is he would have gotten a huge pop, and they did it in front of nobody. Like that to me was the strangest thing.
maybe they're hoping the title cash in is the pop in front of everybody.
I mean, I don't. They've already done the thing with the Otis and Mandy thing, which would have got a huge pop at WrestleMania as well. I think they're just at the moment they're just high on Otis being somebody they can push going forward. They see a lot of potential in him, and I think you can build him up to be like a really big star. I just don't think that giving him the Money in the Bank briefcase this early on in that push is the right move. But I think like if you carried on this steady build and then in a year's time he could be in a position where he's still a bit of a jokey character, but he's got a lot of credibility behind him. Maybe he's had an Intercontinental title reign in that time, and then then you make him a Money in the Bank holder. Now this seems like a little bit too like going from A to D rather than going from A to B to C to D.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back to the Becky stuff, but I kind of want to jump a little bit forward just for this little discussion because I kind of think if they would have known that Sami Zayn would vacate the Intercontinental title, I would argue it'd be better to put the Intercontinental title on Otis than the Money in the Bank. But of course, it depends on their plans. I mean, for all we know, their plans might be that Dolph Ziggler's mad that he doesn't have Mandy anymore, so he takes the briefcase off of him or something like that. There could be lots of different options if this goes down.
But then you have Dolph Ziggler with a briefcase, and that can't happen.
Well, all right, the Dolph Ziggler or Otis at this point, like
Otis, definitely.
Really?
I'd rather somebody who could grow into the role than someone who could never, who's
already passed. Yeah, okay, that's fair. I can live with that.
I say hot potato. Otis drops it to Dolph. Dolph ends up dropping it to Gulak. Gulak drops it to Money in the Bank gets passed around like.
Now, when you say hot potato, do you mean literally? Because that is how Otis won.
Kind of, but then we don't have Rusev in the roster anymore, so.
Money in the Bank replaces the 24/7 title because Gronkowski took it away.
Yeah, and then eventually R-Truth wins the Money in the Bank, and he uses it to cash in on the 24/7 title. There you go. God, it'd be awful. Let's go back to the Becky thing, because this is another story that some people were jumping into way earlier than they should have. Everybody went, oh, Seth Rollins is babyface now. And it was like, well, just because Becky's pregnant doesn't mean that Seth is a babyface. And by the end of the night, we got full-on confirmation that that's certainly not true. He's not pulling a Miz here. Seth Rollins is 100% still a heel, even after that handshake thing. He did pretty much nothing in his match, and then he was just like, hey, I know what I want to do. I want to fuck up Rey Mysterio's eye. And they're going forward with that. So it is a little weird to have this idea that people were like ready to congratulate him and he just snapped and whatever like that. But I am a huge fan of it. I think that's a very interesting direction to go. He lost that match to Drew McIntyre, and that alone could have been like the main reason why they would have gone in this direction. Maybe their plan was sort of like, he'll lose that, and then he'll just sort of be like, oh, I'm so upset because I'm not the champion and I don't know where to go or whatever like that. But if you add on top of that, oh, and you're going to be a father now, some people go nuts with those kind of pressures. And I really like the idea that the Seth Rollins character could be like, oh my God, I'm going to be a dad and I need to be this father figure to an actual human. And I want to do that for the Raw roster and I can't win the championship and I'm whatever. So I'm just like a catatonic nutcase now. I think that's super fun and a lot of options to tell a story there. How you guys
I
feeling
do
about the whole Rollins situation?
I do hope they play on that, because with the handshake, I was very worried that they were just gonna go, okay, he's a babyface now, and I felt that even more so when uh, Becky revealed that she was pregnant, and then I got excited when I saw the Ray thing because he's clearly torn. Like, I don't know what came over me. I'm so sorry. I really enjoy the idea of Seth Rollins trying to be a good guy, but he's just completely out of his mind because, oh my God, I'm going to be a dad. And what am I doing? I have no idea where I'm going. I love it. And I hope that they don't get cold feet and just switch it in 2 weeks.
They're not going to reference the fact that Seth Rollins is the father.
Well, they already did.
Didn't they
Did they?
already?
I thought they did. They said that actually on Raw, because I know.
Yeah. Ray.
Yeah, Ray
Congratulated him.
congratulated him.
He was like, oh, like it's being a father is like great or that whatever the hell he had said, I forget. And he went
And
to
that,
like shake his hand or something, and he just sort of walked away.
and that's why Seth Rollins beat him up, because how dare you remind me that I'm going to be a father.
I just don't know how it's going to work with this idea that Becky is the biggest babyface on, or was the biggest babyface on the Raw side of things, and now Seth is going to use the fact that he's gotten her pregnant to go even more heel. It just seems like I know I understand the idea that you're putting towards it, like the fact that all the pressure's getting to him and he doesn't know what to think right now, and that's caused him to go even further into dark. So, more to the point, I just hate this character that Seth has, and I don't want him to have it anymore. So I'd rather they would just completely have retconned it, and he just like came into Raw this week and said, "Oh, I'm going to be a dad," and he just turned babyface off the back of it, and he said, "Oh, I've got a new lease on life. I don't need to think about this stuff anymore. Like, I lost the Universal title match, but I'm going to make a whole new leaf fix. I need to work hard to be ready to be a new dad and kill off the Monday Night Messiah because it's shit and I don't enjoy it." So,
Well, but then they would have to retcon that wonderful theme song I just gave them.
yeah, I'm pretty sure they could give it to some other loser in NXT when they come up, whatever. When Leon Ruff decide to give Leon Ruff an entrance or something like that.
Oh, they're going to give Leon Ruff something, because he's been taking all the beatings during this quarantine.
They're giving him exposure.
I guess so.
I kind of think that this can lead to. We've
Get off
talked
back of
about
this.
it.
Maybe this is
Good.
behind this character. I was like, this is the sort of like the little touch that is needed to get some sort of momentum out of this character. At least in my perspective, I know other people seem to like it a lot. It's just that it doesn't work for me. And maybe this change does do something good for it, but I wasn't exactly like overwhelmed or excited by the fact that he attacked Rey Mysterio's eye.
See, I'm hoping that Edge and Seth Rollins feud that we've mentioned that we want to see they can play off of that with this too, because now after the 24 special, and obviously the fact that we have known that Edge has had kids before, uh, they could even turn that into part of the story where it could be like Edge and Seth have like a whole, hey, that's not how you're supposed to be a dad type of thing or something. Like they could
But,
do
but
some interesting things with this that deviate a little bit from the Monday Night Messiah. I'm going to be a droning preacher type of thing. And it might give him a little bit more vivacity to himself.
but surely that match between Rollins and Edge is redundant because at Backlash we're going to see the greatest wrestling match of all time.
I hated that so much.
Yeah, I know
Oh my god.
it's the absolute worst thing. Because I know
somebody was fucking with Charlie, right?
Well, I just remember you speaking about on the Money in the Bank post show when I was listening back to it about the fact that talk about how you thought the Money in the Bank match is on your radar for like worst match of the year. It's like I've already had my worst match of the year. Think back to WrestleMania. It's the Edge versus Randy Orton. It's not going to that is not going to change by any stretch of the imagination. And so just even then talking about it was bad enough then saying that okay we're actually going to have a match, and then to build it up so much to the fact like the greatest wrestling match of all time between two all-time legends. Just if it's anything like the last one, if it goes anywhere, it won't go anywhere near as long. But like if it's anything like that last match, then I probably will just skip through it because I don't care. I don't want to watch another really boring match between two guys that wrestle. Well, at least wrestled the previous match in a really boring style.
I just think it's funny when they try to promote something as,
The
hey,
greatest
we
ever.
gave you a lot of things before. This time we're not. Isn't that better? It's like I get it. Like that I know their angle is the whole like, well, he didn't have a wrestling match and can you actually get it done in the ring? The same kind of I get it, but their idea of promoting it as it's going to be a straight up wrestling match. And it's like, oh, you mean like every freaking match that normally happens?
I'll give them credit in that because those two know how to tell more of a verbal and body language story, that they were able to at least make it seem like, okay, there's a purpose for going back down to square one. But I don't like that habit of theirs either. But I can't get over the Charlie Caruso. Well, it's going to be the greatest wrestling match of all time. And what is this thing of it's a wrestling match? Like they really harped on that word wrestling. Like what are they going to go out there and be collegiate about it?
Yeah,
Well, I think
wear
they were
the
just
headgear and all that.
Well, I thought they were just taking the piss out of the fact that they've got so much tenure in the company that they can say the word wrestling and they won't get attacked by Vince McMahon over it.
That would have been
Well,
great
did
if
it-
like the promo would have been them just sitting there, they grab a mic and they go, wrestling, belt, hospital, and they just like say all the
Yeah, just
words
like-
that Vince hates.
It would just be saying, we want to have a straight up sports entertainment spectacle instead. that'd be the opposite. But I thought I understand what you guys are saying that you shouldn't really go from a last man standing match to a straight up wrestling match. But the way that Orton explained it, like the promos that these two pull out are incredible. I just wish the actual matches they put together were just as good.
Maybe it's going to be the best ever straight up sports entertainment spectacle of all time. But they did that whole thing because they wanted to bring in people that could potentially bump up the ratings. And now Becky Lynch isn't going to be on Raw. Now, she is not the type of thing where it's like, okay, like the ratings, every time Becky is popping up on Raw, the ratings go up to a 4.8 or something like that. But WWE's philosophy, whether or not this is bullshit, I don't think that they believe this 100%. But they very clearly promote this idea. Every time that there's one of those conference calls or investors stock meetings or whatever it is, they always harp on this idea of, well, the ratings aren't big because we don't have so and so. We don't have Brock anymore. Roman's been injured. And I feel like that's more of just an excuse to placate those investors and everything rather than their actual philosophy behind things. Because you got to imagine the people that are working in WWE, and it strikes more so when people got released like Hurricane Helms. And Helms is like, oh, this thing sucks, and this thing's not good, and this is bad, and this is whatever. They know things suck in some ways. There's some people in WWE that clearly have a different philosophy about the product than some other people. I mean, we've talked about it a million times. Everybody else has talked about it. It's a one-person show. If Vince McMahon says yes or no, that's how it goes. Some things Vince McMahon just likes, whether or not they're popular or whether or not they're the right idea or maybe they're brilliant. You know, it goes both ways. Vince has made great and horrible calls, and Paul Heyman's had some great and horrible ideas, and everything like that. But I feel like
And Bruce Pritchard hasn't done shit for the world of SmackDown. I had to get it out there because SmackDown's been really bad, even well before the pandemic.
Pritchard has had he's had some great ideas in retrospect on something to wrestle where he's like, yeah, that was a crap thing, we shouldn't have done that, and maybe we should do this instead, and that would be a great idea, and like logical things. And then you have some other things that are like, this couldn't possibly be the same person who says that, but it is. So I feel like they don't necessarily believe, well, we don't have Brock and that's why the ratings are low. I feel like that's their excuse. Yet they don't seem to want to find the solution to the problem anyway. But we're going to hear at the next investors meeting or whatever it is, that call is going to have the phrase, Becky Lynch is not on Raw anymore, and that's one of the reasons why Raw is not doing as well. So they're going to need to try to figure out some kind of way to bump the ratings up, even if they doesn't really change. If they go from a 1.9 or a 2.1 to a 1.8 or a 2.0 or whatever, they're going to still go, well, Becky Lynch isn't there, and that's the reason why. It's not our creative, it's just that we're missing the man on television. So either for like a facetious barricade that you just put up for the investors or for the reality of the situation, how do you guys think they're going to address the ratings situation? No Becky Lynch, no matter what, whether it's a face level or not, is not good for Raw.
Well, you kind of said it already. They're just gonna say, "Oh, well, the ratings are down because we don't have Becky." They're gonna try to keep, I imagine, Edge and Randy as full time as they can, and who knows? Maybe genuinely, if this announcement is, well, guys, NXT is gonna have fans by 2 weeks or June 1st. Maybe they just think, and the fans will come back and the ratings will soar because people will want to watch wrestling again. I don't know. I don't really buy into the idea that not having an audience is hurting the television views, because I think these shows are more for the television audience than ever before. Like, I've often said on this show, sometimes the live crowd is so obnoxious it takes me out of things. So I don't buy that whole idea of, oh, people don't want to watch a show without an audience. I think it's difficult for the performers, but not for the viewers. I think viewership is down because the product isn't good, and they're not gonna flat out admit that until 20 years from now when they figured out the solution and they can do the revisionist history thing. But I think they're just gonna say, here's Edge, here's Orton, and hey, look, we have the wild card rule again.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that are getting involved into the reason why the ratings are down, and they will use the excuse of the Becky Lynch thing. They will use the excuse of the coronavirus stuff. I do think that not having a crowd does affect the viewership thing. I don't think it's as fundamental as they believe it to be, but it's clear that during matches in particular, you do want to have a crowd responding to it. And yes, they can be obnoxious, but at least it's noise that's going on, and it feels more like an event, whereas it just feels pretty dead when it's just two people or however many people wrestling to absolutely no noise. They can't, fundamentally, with their approach to creative and their approach to building stars and stuff like that, they can't address these ratings. The ratings will just continue to slide because the practice that they put forward will not build ratings back up. And that's just like the fundamental truth. Unless they get Lesnar back, or they get Goldberg to appear all the time, or they get like Randy Orton and Edge, and even Randy Orton and Edge have shown that they don't really boost the ratings up too much. Like the ratings were back up to just under 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like with Becky making her big announcement. I mean, the ratings held better for the entire course of the 3 hours, which is like the big thing to take away from it. It's like if you do have big stars appearing on every hour, you're more likely to keep hold of more of the audience. But it's just the fundamental problem is the fact that they don't have any big stars. Even Edge and Randy Orton, they're big stars to wrestling fans, but they're not big stars to a casual audience because
Exactly.
they're big in the wrestling sphere. They're not John Cena, they're not The Rock, they're not Steve Austin. I know just like branding names from like ages ago, but they're not at that level. Even Brock has a far greater crossover appeal, and so it realistically with the people they have, especially if you note the fact that obviously Edge and Orton will probably still only go part-time, and they won't be able to bring in Brock for a while if these restrictions remain, and Goldberg's unlikely to come back for a while. Then yeah, they've got no star power behind them unless Triple H decides to lace it up and start wrestling again.
They don't even have Roman, you know?
No, they don't have Roman on SmackDown, so it's the same problem on SmackDown as it is on Raw. And all I can realistically see is the ratings going down to around about 1.7, somewhere between 1.5 and 1.7 by the end of this whole thing. And then maybe they'll recover a bit when like the coronavirus ends and less people are watching the news on such a regular basis, and they go on to just come back to Raw. But as stuff that's happened with the Monday Night Football has shown, that it's not a done thing that when people stop watching Raw and they take Raw out of their routine, that they're necessarily going to come back once their routine changes again. They might find something else to do on Monday nights because they're not doing anything on either show really to compel people to watch on a regular basis. I mean, they put together this big faction of Andrade, Austin Theory, and Angel Garza to be like, oh, okay, this is like maybe a new hot heel group they're putting together, and maybe they'll spit some steam behind it. It's been less than a month, and they're already teasing them breaking up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that's just going to be Austin Theory gets pushed out, and that's it.
It doesn't matter, though.
Yeah, it potentially be the case, but like it's a hot shotting thing. It's just another example of a hot shotting exercise. It's just okay, we've given these guys 3 weeks, they haven't gotten over, let's break them up.
Yeah,
that type of thing. And with that attitude, you're never going to get anywhere.
And how the fuck were they supposed to get over when all they were there for
was getting beaten up by Drew McIntyre?
Yeah, when they were the League of Nations for Drew. Like, you know, like how the League of Nations was built just for Roman to beat people up. This was this faction for Drew. And we have to talk about this brand to brand invitation thing because this was infuriating for me.
Well, that's probably their answer. Is we'll get people on SmackDown to come over, and the sheer, I mean, WWE is the type of program where
2 years ago, Tony.
It didn't, but
it did work. The ratings did go up in the initial fallout from the like going for the wildcard rule. It is a short-term fix.
So then
it's not sustainable, but it's short-term.
It's the type of thing to get somebody talking for a week or so, and like bringing King Corbin over to Raw is not going to bump up the rating 4 extra points or something like that, but it's something that they can pitch as, isn't this interesting? Because look at WWE, they do this constantly. If they have the option to say for the first time ever, they will say it because they think if you hear the words for the first time ever, that you instantly gravitate more value to something. It's like it's that type of salesmanship type of thing, like when it's a car dealership type of thing, or traveling salesmen aren't really a thing anymore, but like anybody who's pitching anything, even the stupid ShamWow and all that kind of stuff, it's like they give you these type of pitches because they're trying to placate this section of the brain to the most gullible baseline lowest common denominator type of person who will fall for it. The lowest common denominator is my brain right now. That's why I can't talk. But like,
you just got the lowest common denominator. The lowest common denominator is wrestling fans.
Pretty
That
much a
is,
lot of wrestling fans, if not the majority of them.
I
And
mean, you see them all over the place with like the WWE apologists, and everyone has it. AEW has the apologists. Loads of other wrestling promotions. Every form of media, entertainment, sports, everything like that has apologists.
right.
They're
And
people that will just defend them to the hill or whatever.
the same goes for things that are outside of sports, the same things for,
Politics.
musicians, politics. Yeah, it's just if somebody is a fan of something and if they have that sort of switch in their brain where they can shut it off and they could just be like, whatever's happening is amazing. Religion, same type of thing too. It's like people will make excuses for things and people will fall for things. And there is a certain group of people who, when they hear it's a SmackDown guy coming over to Raw, they're going to go, oh my God, this is awesome. Yet, if they were to say King Corbin just got drafted over to Raw the way that Apollo Crews did, nobody gave a shit about Apollo Crews being on Raw because no, now he's a Raw guy and now it doesn't matter. And that's how I think that they're going to try to address this is that they're going to do that pretty much every week and say, well, Charlotte's on SmackDown, and oh, well, this time you're going to watch Monday Night Raw because it's going to be Daniel Bryan is going to show up and he's going to fight Seth Rollins. And oh, on this episode of SmackDown, we're going to actually move Andrade over and he's going to fight uh, Otis or whatever. Like I think that that's how they're going to try to get around this. And it's going to plateau because the ultimate ratings issue is people don't want to watch wrestling right now. If people wanted to watch wrestling and it was just like a great product and they enjoyed everything like that, WWE would be doing amazing numbers because they're the only like new live format type of sports thing that's happening. Yet they can't even capitalize on that during a pandemic when there is no other option to watch other than do you want to watch this old football game that happened 10 years ago or whatever? It's weird to think that people are more interested for some ratio of watching WrestleMania 3 than they are of watching the current episode of Raw.
Well, the thing is, as much as WWE touts, we have all these superstars and there's no off season and all this, they gave people the option to take off, and better or worse, all the people that took off were the people who consistently are seen as the bigger stars. Maybe they would be doing slightly better numbers. I'm not going to say they're doing great. If you had, Roman right now, or if you had Randy, or if you had even like if you could get John Cena to do every other SmackDown or something. But, those guys chose not to do that. So you're left with, let's work with the ragtag crew we have, and you're not getting much of anything.
I mean, it sounds mean to say, but it's just the fact of the matter. You're not going to convince people that you're in a boom of wrestling right now with nobody in the crowd because that's subconsciously, subliminally, it's still going to affect people. There's still going to be I saw an exchange earlier today where somebody's like, oh, they're getting no reaction. And it's like, what do you mean there's no reaction? There's no crowd. They can't. But like, it still gives you that kind of that mental tweak after decades and decades of being used to that. Plus, you're not going to convince people that you're in a wrestling boom when the people that are wrestling are Denzel Dejournette is popping up to lose, and Leon Ruff is getting his ass kicked by Aleister Black, and because they're not names even as much as the people that are names that aren't names. Like Humberto Carrillo at this point, and Akira Tozawa. Big fan of Tozawa. Nobody cares really for the most part. It's not going to bump a rating, and I mean that's a good enough transition I guess I can think of to apply to somebody like Sami Zayn. Zayn has to drop this Intercontinental Championship because he's not going to work during the pandemic. So they're like, all right, well, now we need a new Intercontinental Champion because Sami Zayn's not going to be around. I don't think Sami Zayn popping up on SmackDown is going to change the SmackDown rating all that much, but it goes to show there's another guy that you had a championship with that you got to figure out another alternative for. It's another person that's reliable for his segments that he's not going to be around. One of the questions I have for this, why is this not an interim championship?
because you can maybe make the argument that, well, Jordan Devlin has travel issues. Sami Zayn, kind of like Roman, has made a decision to not come to work. So you can say Jordan Devlin, when he's able to, will face the interim champion. Sami Zayn, basically you're forfeiting because you're not coming to work.
I'd like for them to address it in some fashion like that, but they're not going to.
Fundamentally, this is probably a punishment.
Oh, it definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is them getting back at Zayn for refusing to come into work. Because Roman can get away with it because Roman's the big star and he's like, I'm told the truth. But if someone like Sami does it, then, well, what are you doing? Okay, well, I guess you forfeit your championship then. They probably told him that. I mean, as if Sami's going to care that his fake championship has been taken away from him. But it's like, oh, well, I guess if you don't want to come to work, I guess you don't want to become a champion. You probably just said, okay, yeah, fine. And he'll pitch off about it in his own, like, very sarcastic, like, just, how would you say that? This like subtle digs at WWE, as he typically does do in these circumstances. So I don't imagine that will change by any stretch of the imagination. But it's more the
Not
impact.
to get super political, but he is very much opposed to the current president and the current regime there, and it's not like some of the higher ups in the company don't have family members that work for Trump, or not like Vince McMahon is regularly referred to in press conferences as, yeah, I know Vince McMahon, he's great. And so there's probably some of that too, where he's like, maybe I don't even want to work here,
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the attitude he took.
I don't know if it's.
You could see it.
I don't know if it's like a political type of thing or if it's him trying to prioritize his safety, because I mean that is a factor.
I think he would be coming to work if it was safe to do so. Because I think it is all about just putting his own like well-being and other people's well-being first. He's just being rightly cautious about this whole thing.
It could be a combination too. It could be like, well, why would I risk that? Why would I risk my friends and family? And also, this isn't the right thing to do, and I'm going to be one of the ones that sits out because I don't want to support it. Like, it could be a combination. And I don't necessarily disagree with that either. Like, I don't want this to make it seem like I'm trying to vilify Sami Zayn. It could also be maybe there's some truth to those dirt sheet rumors that Sami Zayn's got a lot of detractors backstage, and maybe people don't get along with Sami Zayn for better or worse, or for either side's fault. And maybe for whatever truth that might be, might not have any at all, maybe there are some bits of tension. And maybe this is him being like, fuck you then, take the Intercontinental title back, the hell with you, I'll sit out, and now you have to crown a new champion. Like, it's completely unknown exactly what led to this point. And all the, the minutia of the details and all the variables and all that stuff, that could be a lot of the factors going into this. But the fact of the matter is, they said it. Sami Zayn's no longer Intercontinental Champion, and they're going to start a tournament on SmackDown to crown a new champion. And I'm assuming it's not going to be an interim champion scenario, but they could get around this by saying Sami Zayn comes back at some point and he goes, I never lost the championship, and it becomes number one contender or something. I don't know. But where would you guys like to see this go? They didn't say who is competing for this tournament. They didn't say how many people are competing. It could be 8, it could be 4. I doubt that it's 4, because really what tournament is it at that point? It could be 16 people. It could go on for a while. It could be a round robin. A lot of different options.
I think NXT has the round robin thing covered, so I can see it being a single elimination, maybe 8 people, 4 from Raw, 4 from SmackDown, or maybe we find out later tonight that NXT is involved in the brand-to-brand invitation, and it's, you get NXT people in there as well.
I fully agree that they're not doing the round robin, because the round robin and the interim thing seem like they're much more sports oriented, and it seems like that's Triple H being like, "How about we do this?" And Vince is just like, "Tournaments are this," you know.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea. You know, if Sammy's not going to be there, you have to do something at some point. So just get it off of him now, like you said, when they're ready and it's safe to go back to work. They'll just do the whole "I never lost it," and then it's Sami Zayn is back with Cesaro and Nakamura, and they can beat up whoever the champion is at the time and get around it like that. But I think it's good for what it is. And the one thing about this coronavirus era is there are chances for somebody to step up and, you know, become a big time player, show yourself as, I guess, reliable under any circumstances. Because I imagine you got to be looking at some of the people and thinking, well, hey, they're reliable, they're working even though it's a pandemic, so let's push them more. Because even Tony Khan said that about the people that work the AEW tapings. That I'm not going to forget who was willing to work these shows and who really helped us out here.
Let's say on that side of things, both for the WWE and AEW, that is absolute disgusting behaviour.
Yeah, I agree.
As a disgusting attitude to take, that you will punish people or you'll push people over it because they were willing to put their health at risk for a fucking wrestling show.
No, fully agree.
That doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, that's like how that's how capitalism operates. So we can't really change that side of things. So I'm not going to go into a huge discussion about capitalism versus socialism and all that other stuff because we'd be here for years at this point. But I think fundamentally this tournament will be structured however it will be structured, and the final will be Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus.
Brilliant. He's right. I'll go one step further. It's at Extreme Rules and it's a ladder match.
I mean, regardless of where it takes place, I mean, they could have a ladder match like as a rematch for it if they decide that they're going to build this to Backlash or whatever. But that's the feud they've been building up on SmackDown. That's the big like singles feud that doesn't involve a championship. So they'll just so this is the one we transition the title over. The only other option would be if they decided, okay, so we're just going to do what we should have done at WrestleMania and just give Daniel Bryan the Intercontinental Championship and just have him be Cesaro or Nakamura or something. If they wanted to do that's the big, like, actual match that had a finish between Daniel Bryan and Shinsuke Nakamura, then you could do that. But I think it's probably the most likely that it's going to be Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus, and that's how you get Sheamus his first Intercontinental title win.
See, I mean, depending on their scenarios for a lot of different things, and if their plans change and all the other kind of things that go along with that, we'll know in retrospect if this would have been a good idea. But if you were to say to me, okay, you have no information about what they want to do going forward, and you kind of can start to pick and choose your own ideas, I personally would rather have it be a long tournament and have like everybody involved. Like, even though they're kind of throwaway matches, book like one of the first round matches to be like Elias versus Bo Dallas, and just be like, everybody knows that Bo Dallas isn't going to win, but having 32 people in this tournament and dragging it out a little bit longer, I think feels better than having it be like a 3-week long tournament and you just get kind of nothing out of it. And then at Backlash, you just have a title defense or something like that. I think Backlash should either be for the championship in the finals, or if you can stretch it out even longer, you kind of try to build some mini feuds inside of the tournaments and stuff like that. Maybe just a couple tournament matches in there, maybe some semifinal matches or something, whatever the case may be. And you can have like Lindsay Dorado against The Miz, and one of them moves on, even though they're in the tag team situation and all that. But I think it essentially, to use my phrase, boils down to the only real options that they have, if they stick to SmackDown, that can be the next champion are Cesaro, Nakamura, which I don't think are going to be the case. Dolph Ziggler, I don't think is going to be the case. Drew Gulak, I don't necessarily believe in, but maybe it's an option. Elias, I don't think is really going to go in that direction, but maybe. Daniel Bryan, Jeff Hardy, King Corbin, or Sheamus. But there is a slight possibility of this other guy, Mustafa Ali. And if
If
they
he
go in this
reveals to be the
hacker thing,
hacker.
yeah, that's like maybe they bump that up a little bit, and maybe he somehow gets involved in that, or maybe they switch things up and they actually start trying to push Chad Gable again, and maybe this is their way of giving Chad Gable something, even though he's been rumored as a potential hacker thing too. But they could go in a couple different directions, and I think that the worst case scenario for me would be Mojo Rawley.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where you pulled that name from. I think as much as you can say, oh, well, if you stretch it out, it's great, they're going to do this so quick. It'll just be for a few weeks. The finals will probably be, if not at Backlash, at Extreme Rules, but they'll likely be at Backlash. And the only other possible match you can get out of it, outside of Jeff Hardy and Sheamus, is Corbin and Elias. And I don't want to see that. So I'll go with Hardy and Sheamus and take whatever I get from that.
I think it could be Corbin and Bryan, possibly.
Yeah, but they seem keen on this whole Elias thing.
Elias popping up at Money in the Bank does kind of skew that in one direction, but to me, it wouldn't be too shocking if they ended up going with this like little feud between Bryan and Corbin going forward, and then eventually pivoted over to something else or whatever like that. But I got to assume at the very least, Bryan is one of the main people that they're going to have in this. And if it's an 8-person tournament, Bryan, Cesaro, Sheamus, Nakamura, Jeff, Corbin, Elias. It's going to be like that bunch. But I don't know. Maybe they do something with NXT with this whole thing. Maybe they do just sort of out of nowhere pull out like, well, we've had a couple people doing things that's at random, and now Isaiah Swerve Scott is now on this, or well, he's in the NXT Cruiserweight title tournament, but like, I don't know who would even apply to that scenario. You can't do Pete Dunne. You can't put like Roderick Strong in there. It'd be weird to have Velveteen Dream in that sort of scenario, but Dijakovic, for instance, like maybe they just put him in the mix or something. I don't know. I don't think that the NXT announcement tonight is going to have anything at all to do with the Intercontinental Championship. I think it's strictly the future of NXT in some fashion. It's the Regal stepping down thing. It's the crowd. It's something with NXT UK. I think it's in that direction. I know that Peter had suggested the idea that they would have like Otis opens up the briefcase and the Intercontinental titles on the inside. That's clearly not happening with the tournament thing that they announced, but it would have been funny at the very least if that would have happened. I would have laughed. I'm going to go so far as to say, just to kind of round up some of my thoughts here about these topics, because we're past an hour at this point or so. I'm going to say the next Intercontinental Champion is just the easy option of Daniel Bryan. What about you guys?
Sheamus.
Jeff Hardy.
I'm going to say as far as who goes forward feuding with Asuka, I think we're getting a Nia Jax feud maybe, or whatever the case may be, and eventually Shayna Baszler's taking that title, maybe at SummerSlam.
I think they give it to Shayna right at Backlash because they're not going to wait.
Yep, same.
And my end guess for the NXT stuff that we'll figure out in a couple hours is that I think that they're going to say something is different with NXT UK. Maybe that's like far too short of a... Not short. I don't know what the phrase I'm going with here. Stupid idea of a guess, but...
Far too insignificant, maybe?
I don't know where I'm going. I'm going in some direction. I'm wrong, but I'm just going to say, I don't know. NXT UK's got something involved with it.
Well, I've said a few times, I think it's got something to do with NXT will be the first WWE product with people back in the Performance Center.
Shawn Michaels is pregnant.
Hopefully it's like
And Stephanie's the father.
hopefully it's something about Sean getting LASIK or something. But I think the fact that DX is doing it clearly means it's not. Hey, we're gonna have a battle royal.
Yeah.
I
That
just
makes
don't
me
thi-
put more stock into the William Regal stepping down thing, even.
I just don't think. I don't think it's an NXT UK related thing. Because I just don't think. Would you announce that on television? Surely that would just be
Yeah.
something they just announce in a press release or something like that, and try and cover up as much as possible, rather than, "Hey, great announcement, big announcement on this big episode of NXT. We're closing down our UK promotion and getting rid of all the people that we've got under contract there."
I guess if they phrase it that way, they certainly would. I
But
would think that they would
suck
try
it.
to spin it, because they always try to spin it in some fashion. If it's like we're getting rid of ECW, it's like, hey, ECW is being replaced with this great new thing, and this isn't great. Like, maybe they would try to spin it in some way of like,
If it is something like that, it's going to be talking about the NXT brand expanding because now all the UK guys are going to be here.
right, exactly. That's kind of what I mean. It's like, NXT UK is going to be officially under the NXT banner from now on, and you're going to get all your favorite people from NXT UK popping up on NXT from now on. By the way, we're releasing some of these people, but you're not supposed to know about that anyway. Like that kind of thing. Like
And
where
also, they
it's
won't be
like
here for the
your
next 3
favorite
months.
people minus Saxon Huxley and Tyson T-Bone and whoever else could be potentially on the chopping block.
And also, they won't be here for the next 6 months or so because we can't get anybody out of the country. But that's fine. Yay.
Yeah, but remember, Marcel Bartel and Fabian Eichner, they're living in Florida, so they're okay. Like, that kind of thing. Like, it could be something like that. For all we know, maybe the NXT announcement is that Asuka also wins the Intercontinental Championship. And, I don't know. This is 2020. I don't freaking think anything's impossible at this point. But all this stuff was crazy enough that we decided, you know what, this should just be the main event of the week instead of doing like play the game or something like that, because there's a lot to unpack. And if we would have waited until the hot tags on Friday or Saturday, it would have been a little bit too late at that point to really get into some of these things. And we wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive. So we do still have the hot tags, which God knows what else is going to happen this week that we're going to talk about on there. But we'll talk about like the Undertaker documentary. We'll talk about any news, any gossip, potential updates when it comes to the Intercontinental Championship tournament or our responses to the NXT announcement. Kind of a follow up to this a little bit. I didn't really do any plugs throughout this whole thing. I just realized that. Let me just toss a couple plugs out there. If you want us to do anything that we have not done, as far as like if you wanted us to do like a play the game or something this week and you want to make sure we do something like that, or you want us to do more of these going over discussions, that are just sort of generic deeper dives into different things, then the best motivating tool for that is the Patreon, because even $1 goes a long way in supporting this endeavor and making sure that the lights are still on and that I can continue to dedicate the time to doing these kind of things and stuff like that. But in particular, if you donate to the $10 and up tiers, then that gives you access to the Darkcasts. We will be doing a Darkcast sometime soon, as well as a bonus feature at some point for the Fanboys Anonymous side of things. But there's also the Pick Your Poison tier on the Patreon, where you can specifically request what you would like to see us do or hear us do, whatever you want to classify it as. So if you're itching for a fan out table, or it's been a while since we've done Belt or Bury and you really want us to do that based off of the AEW roster like we've talked about, you want us to bring back the top rope list, figure out a way to do tier lists, maybe you're really into the idea of the Sporkle quiz, I haven't done that in like a good 2 years or so, and you want us to do something like that, pick a poison. That's the option. The same thing applies to fanboysanonymous.com, which is the geek culture website for movie reviews and topics that are on the non-wrestling spectrum, that, TV stuff and superhero genre and video games and comic books and whatever else that we want to talk about with that kind of side of things. So check out that website, subscribe to that YouTube channel, follow the Facebook and Twitter for that, show your support that you would show for Smark Out Moment over on the Blue Brand. And another thing to be aware of is if you want to help out on the monetary side of things and you want something tangible to actually hold other than just like the Patreon side of things, there's the TeePublic and Redbubble shops where you can pick up merchandise. There's a lot of different designs and a lot of different product options for those two different sites, because there's shops for Fanboys Anonymous, for A Mango Tees, and for Smark Moment. So there's plenty of different options of things I'm trying to work on here and there. I really do want to get some mask ideas up and running. I'm going to have to try to get Caroline to help me out with that a little bit. And, you might be able to buy a mask soon. It's got some kind of different cool designs. But outside of those types of things, I will take a little break on my plugs, give these guys a little chance to give their plugs as well. Then I'll come back and give you guys some information about some other things that you should be aware of coming up in the coming weeks or so. So, Rob, go ahead. Toss out your plugs.
Yeah, if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DudeFelice. And outside of that, I work for WrestleZone.com and Fightful.com. So check out those websites for all your wrestling news needs as we continue this crazy year. Cal?
Follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Check out the weekly articles on smarkatmoment.com, including my weekly contribution, the Power Rankings. If you're also on there, you might as well check out the 25 years of the game, counting down Triple H's 25 greatest matches, which is my celebration of his 25th anniversary in WWE. So, yeah, check out that article as well. And there might be something coming in the pipeline soon that I've been discussing with Rob. Potentially a new series, but I don't want to spoil too much right now because we're very non-committal people.
That's right.
So at the very least, we know that the hot tags are coming up at the end of this week. We will talk about our reviews of Raw, NXT, SmackDown, Dynamite, all that stuff. The Undertaker thing, we're going to talk about the Alberto Del Rio arrest, which is going to be very dicey. And coming up next week already, it seems like this is kind of crazy. We're going to do our Double or Nothing predictions because Double or Nothing is popping up on May 23rd. We're not that far away. It's only 10 days from now. Wait, not May 23rd. Wait, what? Is that what it is? Yeah.
May 23rd. Yeah, it's a Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday. That is Saturday shows.
Yeah, so 10 days from now. So that is at least in the pipeline. And then we've currently got listed a bunch of question marks. So May 27th or so, around that time frame, that week, episode 443. Who knows what we're doing? June? Up in the air. We'll figure out a little bit more of a game plan as time goes on, but if you want to be a part of the planning process and you want to try to toss out some ideas of what you'd like to see us do over these couple of weeks or so leading up to Backlash, and we'll obviously do the predictions and all that stuff. One of the ways to be in that discussion is to send tweets and, kind of let me know in the comments and everything else like that. But another thing is to just hop on the Facebook group that we have, facebook.com/groups/themegamaniacs, because there's a strong likelihood that I might put some kind of a poll up of just like, hey, what do you like to see over the next couple of weeks? And if we don't have anything that dictates that we need to go in this certain direction, like the way that this happened with this kind of stuff, or, superstar scores about a certain person or whatever it is that might end up being one more match, blah, 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 then, we'll try to figure out some other ideas that can kind of shake things up a little bit. Maybe one of the things that we can do is the Mist of the Smark, which we haven't had a chance to do yet. And one of the options for that is that I might sit down and watch, like No Holds Barred or something. Maybe we'll do something based off of that just for some fun. Or maybe we'll dedicate more time to AEW because we don't do a lot of AEW related things here. And once Double or Nothing happens, maybe we'll try to get more into that track or something. I don't know. In any fashion, if you have your opinions out there and I know what you guys would be interested in hearing, I'm going to take that all into consideration and then factor that into our plans going forward. So you stay tuned, you tweet, you follow, you favorite, you like, you leave comments, you show your support through the Patreon, you do the Pick Your Poison tier, whatever fashion it is, it's greatly appreciated, including just listening to this podcast. And I hope that you enjoyed it. So that's going to do us in for now, at the very least, but we will see you soon enough. And until then, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we're being counted out.